I think I see a Pikachu. Let's go on over here. We're going to talk about, yes, Pokemon Go, but the technical side of Pokemon Go. We've got two experts joining us. First, sitting to your left, my right, Lori Voss. He's the founder and CEO of NPM Incorporated, an open source project a lot of us use to install software.
Cool.
And also on the phone right now via Skype, Michael Christopher. He is. Are you a developer, Michael? What's your story?
Yeah, I'm a developer. Most of my experience is actually in the video space.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of do everything. I'm back end primarily.
So the first thing I want to ask Lori a little bit about is, I'm sure this isn't Niantic's desire, but it's been very hard to play Pokemon Go ever since it came out on July 6th. They clearly didn't anticipate the demand, but once they had the demand, why couldn't they just put a bunch of servers online and fix it?
That's an excellent question. The people who work at Niantic was spun off of Google. They're ex-Googlers, so they know what they're doing when it comes to scale. Google has no problems building things that are very, very big. So there's a couple of clues in the way the game fails that are indicating where they've created these single points of failure, these bottlenecks that are probably holding up the game. The first couple of days, people saw that it would fail at login a lot of the time.
Right.
Which suggests that, the thing that they hadn't anticipated is 10 or 100 times as many people trying to log in just in the first place. The login server is not usually like the busiest part of your game because you only log in once and then you go. But once your login server starts to fail, people are constantly trying to log back in.
Making it worse.
Right. So it's a very common problem that the login server, if the login server is fine, everything is perfect. But if the login server is even a little bit flaky, it goes from flaky to down.
It doesn't matter what's behind the front door if the front door won't open.
Right. So everyone was smacking into the front door. And after that, the next thing is you see a lot of errors about failed to download the game data. And the game data is like the current state of the player. And again, it's this thing, you should only need to do that once. But if the servers are already flaky, then people are doing it a lot more often than you would have expected they would do.
So these are kind of cascading failures.
Absolutely. That's how a big system like this fails. It's never just one thing. It's, one thing that wasn't supposed to happen is happening all the time. So these other three things that you never thought would happen are now happening constantly.
Michael, you might have a little expertise on the kind of unusual nature of this game, because Michael, along with others, reverse engineered the API to create a map mashup that shows you where Pokemon are anywhere in the world in real time. First of all, how did you do that?
Yeah, so there was a community on Reddit called Pokemon Dev that right after the game came out basically started reverse engineering the game, decompiling the APKs for Android, and then looking at how things worked underneath the covers. And what we found is that it was very similar to Ingress, which has a huge community of developers and is kind of well understood in the space.
And that's not a surprise. Niantic created Ingress. And in fact, Pokemon Go, I think it's fair to say, is really a skinned Ingress. I mean, it's just Pokemon added to Ingress. It's a very similar game.
In fact, the database of Pokestops and gyms are basically identical.
Yeah, to the Ingress.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
So you were able to kind of presume that they must be doing something similar. But what's interesting is that this isn't like Twitter, where you go to a server, you put something, and then it has to replicate it. And this is a little more complicated. It looks like they have a Maps API, they have an OAuth API. They have a lot of pieces in this puzzle. Does that make it less reliable?
If you're building something at scale, you're generally going to build what's called a distributed system. You're going to have split, you're not going to have all of your logic in one place. You're going to have lots of different types of servers, right? So it's not going to be this one server that does the login and the game and the map and the Pokemon. Like, each one of those is a different type of server. You can see from the way that the game has changed since it launched that they are doing things with the different types of servers that failed. So the login servers, it seems like they helped that out. They made it so you had to log in much less often. You were talking about how the radar suddenly got a lot less granular. If you think about how, if
that's a hard thing to do.
Right. If you're familiar with how maps work, having a real-time map that moves stuff around, that's really computationally expensive. So if you make the map really inaccurate, which is what they did with the radar, that would probably reduce the load on the maps. That's probably what I think what they were doing there.
They've mostly fixed it. In fact, yesterday we thought this is going to be a calamity because Japan went online, right? And actually yesterday was one of the best days of the week. Monday, it had been down almost all day. So they are making progress with this. Do you see this in your own map? I mean, are you, Michael, are you hit by server issues as well?
So it's an interesting topic. Radar, for example, is actually, the changes that they made are 100% client-side. When we talk to the API, we get a latitude and longitude for every single item on the map.
They still have the capability.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the fact that Radar is now broken in the client has been the #1 cause for people to download the app.
And I think I guess what you're saying, Laurie, makes sense, that it was a very challenging, thing to do. But I also think they did it to keep people from walking off cliffs chasing rare Pokemon. The radar has to have been one of the main reasons people got in trouble playing Pokemon Go, because instead of just getting whatever's nearby, and your map too, Michael, they're going off saying, I gotta get a Vaporeon and it's over there, and they're going to find it.
Yeah. The plus side with the map is, at least if you're going to go stand in the area where the Pokemon is, you don't have to walk off the cliff. You can go stand there, open the app, and it's going to show up.
Thank goodness.
And it's well, can you run this on mobile as well? Is it?
The desktop application that I created can be accessed via mobile, via tunnel.
It's a web. You have to tunnel to it. It's not.
Yeah,
okay.
There's a tunneling mechanism built into the app.
Okay.
But it is desktop kind of primary. The community in general is working very hard to get everything web-based. The problem is the scale, as Laurie was talking about, the scale of that data is immense. And creating databases that don't go down when you've got hundreds of thousands or millions of people trying to query them in real time
not easy.
is a hard problem.
And yet I would think it'd be solved. I mean, Twitter had fail whales a lot in the early days. They re-architected somehow, I don't know how, and they don't have fail whales anymore. Facebook, which would arguably have the worst problem of all with 1.5 billion monthly active users, seems to be pretty reliable, right? You don't see fail whales. So aren't these problems well known and solvable?
So I think we were talking about this earlier. I think what caught them by surprise was how much more popular Pokemon was than any mobile game has ever been before, right?
Apple says it's what did Apple say?
It was the biggest, in the first week, it was the biggest
of any
amount
game
of
ever.
downloads
Right.
in the App Store, yeah.
So if you're a smart developer, you're like, all right, this is Pokemon, it's going to be super popular. Let's make our servers scale to match the biggest mobile game that's ever existed. And you do, however many servers you need.
Enough.
And they got 10 times that many. Like, I feel for them. Like, even if you were really doing your homework, nobody predicted how big this was going to be.
So in a day or two, they noticed.
Yeah.
Right? And they have money, because they're making money, I would imagine pretty good money at this point on this thing. Can't they just buy more servers?
It depends how you've architected the thing. If you've built it to scale horizontally, is the term, then you should be able to just, make it twice as big by spinning up twice as many servers. But making an application that can truly scale horizontally, that really doesn't have any, one single point of failure, something that everything depends on.
Dependencies are the problem.
Login, the login and authentication are often the problem, because you can't distribute them, right? Like, the definition of what your password is, it can't live in two places at once, because you can only have one password. So that has to be, ultimately, there has to be one source of truth for that. And unless you really do your homework to shard that database and split it into 1 million pieces, that's often going to be where you're going to hit a point of failure in a distributed system like this, especially if you thought you could get away with it, right? If you thought it was only going to be 10 million people and it turned out to be 100 million people, you probably wouldn't have done all that extra effort to split that database up in the way that you need to. You can do it, but it's not a problem you can fix in 2 weeks. You have to re-architect.
Michael, were you able, in reverse engineering this, were you able to kind of deduce what their technology stack is?
Well, I actually wanted to talk about
Go ahead, yes. Talk about what you want to talk about then.
Yeah, on the login sort of bit, sorry, that was just, what we've noticed in kind of this reverse engineering process is that is still run by Nintendo. And I don't think Nintendo was well equipped to handle the influx of.
There were 2 logins, right? You could use a Pokemon Trainer login. That broke almost instantly.
Right.
But there was also a Google OAuth login, right?
But that actually goes and talks to the Pokemon single sign-on.
Yeah, the game data is still, it's still
Everything
on Nintendo.
flows through. Basically, you have Pokemon Trainer Club and you have Google OAuth. Those go into Pokemon single sign-on. And then that gets an authentication ticket that can be sent over to the
It wasn't
Niantic
OAuth
servers.
that was breaking. That makes sense because I could still use Google OAuth on other sites without a
Right.
problem.
It was once you had the identifier, then
Yeah.
you'd go into Nintendo servers and try and get the game data. And Nintendo was like, we weren't expecting
What
this many
the
people.
what? What's going on?
So was it an issue of Niantic and Nintendo not communicating?
I think, like I said, I think they communicated and they just didn't understand
No
how
one would
big this was
expect
going to
this.
be.
Yeah, it went viral. I mean, just the idea of everyone sharing screenshots and, you know, it was, you can't
people,
expect that.
people who've never played Pokemon before, like myself, are obsessed with this game. Who thought that was going to happen?
And it's a little telling that they were able to launch in Japan with much fewer problems. And that has to be the biggest country of all for Pokemon. Right? I can only imagine the enthusiasm.
Michael, what does Niantic think about your map?
Officially, everything that we are doing is using a private API. So they haven't officially.
There's no public API. You just figured out what they were doing.
Right. Yeah. This is all reverse engineered.
Oh boy.
So we're basically calling these same APIs the game is calling in a way that is very much against the terms of service.
Well,
of the
then
game.
you're part of the problem. You're probably.
Well, yeah, and given the way that the map applications work, you basically put your player in the map and then move it around very, very rapidly in order to generate the data. Those applications are all putting a much higher load on at least the read portion of the API.
Could they shut you down easily, or?
It remains to be seen.
It's possible they can't tell it's you, right?
Well, they shouldn't be able to tell that we're pulling the data, but if you log in with your own account, there's basically 2 big payloads we're seeing in the actual API request response cycle. One of those we've decoded, and one of those is the game data. It's the player profile, it's the statistics, it's your bag, it's all that kind of stuff. It's the map state. And then there's another one that's been encrypted that a whole bunch of people are still trying to work out what exactly is in that payload. But we suspect it's either logging and analytics data, or it's some kind of anti-cheat mechanism. So far, nobody's gotten banned for using this, but the expectation is that that will come. So
if I use my account, I have caught 3. I'm on level 3, so I should not. I should use a different account, or else I'll lose all 4 Pokemon that I've caught.
She's a learner. She's just beginning. Well, it's not Michael. That is Michael Christopher is not his real name. That's actually not how he looks, and we believe he's somewhere in Saskatoon.
Yeah, we scrambled his voice.
Yeah, and so no one will ever know. Are you a little worried that you're going to get a little knock on the door at some point?
No, we're going against the terms of service, but I don't think
get thrown in jail for that. Yeah. And it's kind of fun, isn't it?
Of course.
What a fun. Is it still under development, or I mean, is the Reddit group still working hard?
Very active. The goal right now is actually to build a single unified data store of all Pokemon actions and everything going on in the system that are
Why not? Right?
variable.
Might as well.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people that are working on big data analytics right now and trying to map. And
you need MapReduce, and it'd be easy, right? No problem at all. What database are they using? Do you know, Lori?
Nobody who's actually working on the game will talk to me.
Yeah.
But the people who
I bet it's not Oracle though. I'm just thinking.
The people who work at Google and knew what Ingress was doing before Ingress spun out. They say it's something like Bigtable. Google has its own internal, very large scale database. I don't know if it's the commercial one that Google offers, because Google offers a commercial Bigtable now.
Right.
But it would be something along those lines, a very large cloud database, very simple features, very scalable.
And it's designed to handle all of the spidered links and be able to quickly search through those, so it's highly responsive, highly distributed.
Right. It's meant to not do very much, but do it for enormous numbers of people.
Yeah. Wow. It's kind of, it's fun. This is the kind of the meta Pokemon Go game. You know, you could play. You could be like that, or you could reverse engineer the whole thing and create a super map that everybody could use and figure out where the Pokemon is. And I think that sounds like an even more fun game. You guys are great. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. Where can people find your map?
It's on GitHub. GitHub.com/mchristopher/Pokemon Go desktop map.
Do you want people to fork it and do their own thing?
Yeah, that'd be great. We've gotten over what do we had 160,000 downloads in the past days.
Is it what kind of a language?
It's an Elixir application that wraps a Python application that is being worked on frequently by the community. But anybody is welcome to jump in and encouraged.
I think what you need to do is make an NPM package so that everybody can install this on their own system.
There's a couple NPM packages already that there's one that tells you whether or not Pokemon servers are up or down.
Nice. I love it. NPM, you probably already use it. If you don't have to even be a developer, but if you use open source systems at all, very frequently you'll need to install something using the Node package. I call it the Node package manager. It doesn't stand for that. It's just NPM. And I'm so glad you could join us. Laurie Voss is founder and COO of NPM. So you were one of the original devs on NPM?
No, I'm very much a newcomer. My connection to NPM is that Isaac Schluter, who did invent NPM, we go way back. And
Nice.
when NPM needed to become a company, he was like, I know how to build NPM. You know how to run a company. Can you help me out?
I've heard of people doing that. It's very effective. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Michael. Great to talk to you both. It's kind of fun to see, kind of peek behind the pokey curtain and see what's going on.